Hey everybody, it's Kyle. Hey, last week we focused on your power state, and hopefully you've got a word now that puts you into that state. If you don't, go back, do it again. I need you to understand that principle, along with the living consciously, which is the wait, what am I thinking, and the making your past an asset, reframing events in your life to work for you. So today we're going to talk about something I think that's more practical and will help you thrive in chaos when things get really hard. And today, that's what we're going to cover is winning a meltdown. So a while back, we had developed a process and kind of gone through it, my wife and I. And then recently, my son went through a pretty bad meltdown, probably maybe a 2.5 hour meltdown. It's pretty serious stuff, and I was up there with him taking care of things. And when I came down, I sat down next to my wife and I said, okay, he's better now, so what do you want to do? And I kind of smiled at her. And she got a little nervous because she said, you know what, you're suppressing something and you're going to at some point explode if you don't get it out of your system. I know it's frustrating and you're exhausted. And so she kind of walked me through the process of really kind of my mindset, and we refreshed ourselves on kind of the process of winning every meltdown. So I want to share that with you today. And I'm going to give you a little set of letters at the end to help you remember what those are. So the first thing we need to understand in this process is that we shouldn't have false expectations. If we have kids that have meltdowns periodically, then that's what they do. And for us to assume that they won't is bad. So that's on us. If we come home and something tips our child into a meltdown and we act like we've never seen that before, or we're, oh my gosh, again, really, why would we act like that? If our kids have meltdowns, and when they have a meltdown, we shouldn't be surprised by it. We should understand that that's who they are, and we should assume that that's periodically going to happen. So the first thing is to assume it will happen, and don't set up false expectations that it'll never happen again, because that's really just going to aggravate you. The next thing you need to understand is when you go into a meltdown, when you're getting ready for a meltdown, or you find yourself or your child tipping into a meltdown, is you should prepare yourself, both physically and mentally. And the way I prepare myself physically is I know when I'm standing up straight and I'm smiling and I'm breathing deeply, that I feel better about myself. It's a physical thing for me. And so I stand up straight and I tell myself, I got this, right? Or I use my power state word, holy crap, I can handle it. And I move forward into that physically. And then also we should prepare ourselves mentally. We should start focusing on not the trial or the difficulty we're about to experience, but the best way to handle it. We should put ourselves in a mental state that says, I can do this. And you've got a power state now, so you can use that word. And you can say, I've done this before, I'll do it again, and I'll handle it properly. And so when you go into that meltdown, you're ready. You say, I got this, I'm ready to go, and I'm prepared. So the first is don't make bad assumptions. That's an A. And the second is prepare, and that's a P. The next thing you want to do is decide you're going to win the meltdown. Now, what I don't mean by win is that you're going to stop the meltdown, or he's never going to do it again, or she's never going to do it again. What I mean by winning a meltdown is that you're at your best for the entire meltdown. You're patient, you're kind, you're loving, you're understanding when you're with your child, and you're doing the things that are best for them. And if you can continue that throughout the entire meltdown, then you've won that meltdown, because your child hasn't tipped you into a state that's unproductive. You're patient, you're kind, you express love throughout that process. And that really, when you prepare and say, I'm going to win this by showing extreme kindness, extreme patience, that's really when you start to win those meltdowns. So the next thing you need to understand, and this is where my wife comes in and what we were talking about, is it can be exhausting. Being patient for 2 hours, being loving consistently for 2 hours, or kind, it can be exhausting while your child is melting down and there's so much turmoil in their minds and you're being kind and patient. It can be very exhausting. And so the two things I like to do is, number one, is I like to prepare myself to endure. Whether it's a 1 minute meltdown, which we don't have those, but let's say it's a 10-minute meltdown or a half an hour meltdown, I'm ready for that. I can endure that. If it's a 5-hour meltdown, I'm going to endure that. I'm not going to leave or remove myself from the situation until things are in good shape. And so I need to endure for as long as I need to endure. And sometimes as you start to get tired, or you can feel yourself getting frustrated or thinking, how long is this going to last? Those are unproductive thoughts. And so what I like to do is call on reserve energy. And I'll explain what I mean by that. When I was a bit younger, I did a little boxing. And when you box, they teach you to keep your hands up. This is probably not new to anybody. But what happens is as you start punching and you're throwing punches, you start getting tired, right? And you get what they call punched out, and your hands start to drop. Okay? They're supposed to be right under your eyes, but if they're down here, you're vulnerable. And what typically happens to people is they get punch tired, right? I'm getting tired already. But when I was younger, I could do it a lot longer. But you get punch tired, and then your hands start to drop, and what happens is you can feel yourself, your arms start to feel heavy, right? And what they do in boxing is they teach you when your arms start to feel heavy is you get them up, okay? When you feel that, you trigger that feeling of them being heavy to pull them up. So you're like, you punch and punch and punch, and you get tired, and you feel your arms get heavy, and you pull them up, okay? Pull them up. Now what happens if you don't pull them up is you get the crap beat out of you. It's a pretty serious consequence for not calling on reserve energy. Now here's the interesting thing. Never once in my boxing career, or anybody's, have I ever experienced somebody who was so tired they couldn't raise their hands up. That's not a lot, right? From here to here, it's not a lot. Especially when you know you're going to get smacked in the head if you don't get your hands up. And so it's called reserve energy. And they teach you in boxing, you always have reserve energy. Whether you think you do or not doesn't matter. You always have it. And I want you to start to believe that, because you do. You always have it. And we see it sometimes in professional sports. You know, we see a 7-game basketball series where both teams pour their entire hearts into winning these games over a 7-game series. And at the end, one team loses and they fall to the floor and they're exhausted and they can't move. And the other team wins and they're so excited they jump around. They start running all over the place. Wait a minute. Weren't they exhausted too? Yeah, they were. But they jump around, they run up in the stands, they find their families, they find their coaches. Sometimes they go out and party all night long. Now, where does this reserve energy come from? It's there. And they have it, and you have it, and I have it. And so when we need to call on that reserve energy, we should call on it, okay? When we're in the middle of a meltdown and it's lasting 2.5, you're starting to get exhausted, when you start to feel that, call on that reserve energy. Sit up straight, smile, know you have that reserve energy. So that's the E. And the last thing you need to do really is this. Whenever you go through a 2.5, 3 hour meltdown and you're kind and patient and loving, and you won that meltdown and you've treated your child in the way that they need to be treated, you've been patient and kind and loving and helped them, they don't want to be melting down any more than you want them to be melting down. And when you get through that and you've done the right things, you really need to celebrate. And that's the C. And if you put those together, assume, prepare, win, endure, and celebrate, they spell APWAC. Now, I say it that way, APWAC, because it kind of sounds like Aflac. And that is an easy way to remember it. APWAC, right? A-P-W-E-C. Assume, prepare, win, energy, and endure, and celebrate. And the celebrate is really what you need to make sure you do. When you go through a meltdown and you get through it, and you're at the end of it, and your child is back to normal, and everything's back in the way it should be, the last thing you want to do is go downstairs and be dead tired or dead. You can't do anything else the rest of the day, or you can't give the rest of your family what they need from you. And that's when you want to celebrate. So when you walk out of that room and you've won that meltdown, you need to create a celebratory word. I just give it a yes. Okay, you can't see my hand, but I'm doing this, because what I want to do is I want to celebrate the fact that I was the person I needed to be for my son when they needed me the most. When he needs me the most, I want to be that person. And so I really want you to celebrate. So you got that right, APWEC. Assume that there are going to be meltdowns. Prepare yourself physically and mentally. Prepare to win. And by win, by loving, kindness, patience. E is endure and call on reserve energy when you need it. And the C is celebrate. And you can also call on reserve energy then too. Because like I said, the last thing you want to do is go through a meltdown at noon on Saturday that lasts 3 hours, and at 3 o'clock you're dead to the rest of your family for the rest of the weekend. That's not what we need to do. What we need to do is be there for the rest of our family, just like we are there for those that are on the spectrum. So that's really the key to winning a meltdown. So hopefully that's helpful. Remember, next time you see an Aflac commercial, you're going to think of this. APWEC, right? Assume, prepare, win, endure, celebrate. Okay? Pretty simple, but effective. So what I want you to do this week is think about that. APWEC, periodically. Tell yourself that if you need to. If you see a commercial, run that process through your mind, and then when a meltdown does happen, right? Don't be surprised. Assume it will happen occasionally. Don't be surprised. Prepare, win, endure, and celebrate. Pretty simple stuff, but very, very effective. And that's really what my wife was able to draw out of me and what we were able to really talk about that evening. So do that this week. APWAC, tell yourself, APWAC, all week long. And our next video next week is going to be one that's a little bit more serious. I might even wear sunglasses because I might get a little bit emotional, because we're going to talk about events. I've met a lot of people in my experiences with doing this, and some of those people have had experiences that were horrible, that were devastating. Some of us have experienced things in our past that seem unbearable, and I've been able to learn from them, and I want to share that with you in our next video next week, how we can take even the most dire or unimaginable past experiences and make them work for you. And they taught me how to do that, which is fantastic. I'm going to tell you a story about Brenda Jackson, specifically, who was abused as a child, got into an abusive relationship, escaped that, ended up in a second abusive relationship as an adult, and they was able to escape and turn her life around tremendously. And I don't want to give away too much. It's exciting, but look for that next week. But this week, remember, APWAC, assume, prepare, win, endure, celebrate. Okay? That's how you win every meltdown. That's how we win meltdowns in our family. And guess what? Throw a meltdown in the middle of the day at us. Doesn't matter. We'll manage it. We'll go through it. We'll have a great day for the rest of the day. And isn't that what we're trying to do? We're trying to thrive in chaos. So hopefully that's helpful for you. If you'll apply it this week, I know it will be. And by the way, all that information is on the printout that you can print out. You'll see APWAC down here. I think it even says you have to pronounce it like a duck. APWAC, right? Okay. So go out this week, thrive. Remember APWAC. Put it into place. If you don't see a meltdown this week, don't worry about it. Drill it into your brain so that whenever you do, you're ready. So, hey, go thrive. I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.